Come on!
And yet, I think, I was having this conversation yesterday. Somebody asked me about leadership. They're like, oh, I want to get into leadership. And they says to me, they said, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to learn about, and she was talking about, she's actually going to take college course. Okay. And I said, well, what are you going to do that for? And she said, well, I want to get into leadership. I said, okay, so tell me about this college course. And she said, well, it's about all kinds of stuff. It's about, operations. And she's just started talking about all these structural things. And I go, well, that's managing things. That's not leading people. And I said, those are two different things, right? And so then we got into this huge conversation about leadership. And then, it's just what an amazing topic, right? And so I think before I came on here, I was just thinking to myself, and I think one of the things oftentimes that we miss is as a leader, at least when we're a new leader or at least getting into leadership, it's about others and it's no longer about yourself. It's no longer about yourself, right? And I think we have to figure that part out and get past that, and ego aside, it becomes about developing others and helping them get what they want so that you can get what you want, right? It's all about influence and doing it that way.
What if you believe, what if you're an audience member today, and what if you have a belief that you're not a leader? What do you have to say to that person?
I say they probably are, and even if they're feeling as if they're not, it's a skill and it can be developed, right? So, I'd probably ask them some questions. Hey, can you think of a time? And if I dug deep enough, there probably has been a time in their life where they've done it and they didn't know it, right? So it could have gone all the way back to grade school. I was thinking about that too, right? You could have been a pick the leader to lead like a kickball team and pick all the players, right? And then put them in all the places, and so that's a leader, right? And unknowingly, you got that opportunity to be the leader of this kickball team in grade school, right? So if I question them enough at some point in their life, they've probably had that opportunity, they just didn't recognize it at that time. So, and then if they're questioning as far as their skills, I mean, it is a skill and it can be developed over time, and you do get better. And quite honestly, it's ongoing. I'm always working on my leadership skills. Gosh, I got room to grow. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I would say that everyone leads another in some manner. And, for
Yeah.
example, maybe you direct your spouse or your partner, or or they guide you, or you may lead a child or a friend, or certainly I hope that you're leading yourself. And by the way, go Rose Hill Rockets. I just want to say that for Matt, because you talked about grade school, and Rose Hill is in Shawnee, Kansas, which is in Matt's neck of the woods. So that was my grade school because Curtis brought that up. And that's a long-winded way to tie a whole bunch of 40 years of experience together into
And you
one
got to
little
lead the
ball.
kickball team.
Yeah, I got to lead the kickball team. How does leadership extend from your direct interactions?
Give me more clarity around that.
Well, let me share with you my perception on it, and then
Do.
maybe you could expand on it. So I believe that the nature of influence allows for you to have a ripple effect. So you can impact people who you've never even met through the way that you lead those, who are close to you. So I'll give you an example. Once upon a time, I was a waiter at a high-end steakhouse. And there was a particular client that would come in. I don't know if we would call him a client, I guess customer. And he would come in and he was the biggest a-hole in the planet. Like, this guy was a jerk. And I would always volunteer to go and wait on the guys. And one day, one of the other waiters was like, "Dan, why do you want to wait on the guy? He's an okay tipper, but he's just a jerk." I said, "Because I care for the next guy." And he says, "What do you mean you care for the next guy?" I said, "Because he's entering this restaurant as a jerk, and he's going to leave this restaurant as a jerk. But I have the opportunity to maybe lead his day, so he's maybe just a little bit less of a jerk when he leaves here. So the next poor schmuck before Uber's, a cab driver. So the taxi cab driver that he interacts with when he leaves here to go to Capitol Hill, this is in DC, that he's that much less of a jerk to that person. So that's a way that I had an awareness of that at the time, but we may not realize the ripple effect that we have in our leadership where we're not even intending to lead. And that's what I mean by like, what is the extension of leadership? How does that extend from your direct interactions? Because now I'm impacting the cab driver. I'm impacting the cab
Sure.
driver's kids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, up, and I think Matt even alluded to that, like how we're showing up each and every single day in every how do you say in every interaction that we're actually having. And you just you gave a perfect example. I love that example. um we are having that impact, and I know I certainly think about it that way. How am I showing up? I heard one thing that Matt started talking about. He said something about how what did he say? How are you performing that people see that, right? And so, what are your standards, and are you keeping up with your own standards? And I heard you even say you're gonna make it to the gym after we're done today, right? So I get that, and people see that. People see everything that you do, right? So that impact runs deep, and um, I think your example was perfect. It is just like that you described.
Curtis, let me ask you another question. I got a whiny dog here, so I'm going to ask you a question, and then you're going to be solo here for about 30 seconds while we hit the door there. What do you do if you have critical feedback for another person?
Oh, I love it.
You're right back.
So yeah, and he does leave. Look at that. So I mean, critical feedback with other people. That's tough conversation. We've all probably had to have it. If you haven't yet, you're probably going to have it sometime in your lifetime. It's something that you have to approach with the perfect balance of care and candor. And, when I always do it, that conversation starts out with care and I end with candor. I mean, we've got to, you've got to uncover that problem and get to the root of it in order to get the solutions. But it's got to start with that care. And my conversation is always going to end with some candor because, again, we're talking about leadership, and it is about other people. And if I care about them, I am going to be candid with them, by the time I finish that conversation, because that's what's going to make them better. And I know that I personally would appreciate that. And those that I've had the opportunity to lead, they've all appreciated that. And you made it back.
I did. Leslie, can you do me a favor? Can you share the slide with the check mark? And I want to show that to the audience. And then Curtis, I want you to comment on it.
Sure.
And it's a slide that starts with a solo person and the impact that you can make as a solo person, and then the struggle, right? The struggle of now I'm putting together people,
Yeah.
and sometimes that you may like take a step back when you do that, but then when you get the right team of people, and how the performance increases. So explain maybe in a Curtis Tyree way what I just said about this image that's on the thing here.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about, okay, I'm in the real estate bit, and because I've seen it so many times, right? I'm individual, I'm having success, and it's time for me to build out a team, right? And so I've seen it time and time again. And got to coach people that, built teams and what that looks like. And it does get ugly. And it does start out exactly like you've explained. It's an individual. We start gathering a couple of people, bringing them into our world. And quite honestly, you're just some random group. I've seen it time and time again. And there's a number of reasons for that. We've sometimes hired the wrong people. Sometimes we failed to train them. Sometimes we're not holding them accountable to standards. Sometimes we're not holding them accountable at all. And so we're just sort of running them up all over the place. And then finally and what happens, or at least what I'd seen, is that so then we just replace people. We do that for a while, and we just stay this group, and it's this ongoing random group. And but new people, old people out, and all that kind of stuff. And then finally, had had enough and sort of worked on those leadership skills and setting a big vision, which is a skill of leadership that you need to do. Getting good with understanding people and pouring into them, and understanding that it's through influence and that it's about them. You start turning from a group into this team, and that's when, and as your chart alludes to, is that's when you start seeing the performance go up. I'd seen people that again, started a team, and for 1, 2, 3 years until they sort of figured it out, their numbers were just like this. Like, they didn't grow. They had a whole bunch of people. They didn't go anywhere, at least not through numbers. And then again, when they started to develop their leadership skills and implement the things that are required of being a good leader and putting together a team for performance and culture and having high standards, holding people accountable, that's when they become a team, and that's when performance starts to just go out of this world.
So what my belief is that your success is mutual with those that you lead. And when you engineer a team to succeed at an optimal level, with every member taking on their duties entirely, and you as the leader responsible for making sure that you're casting the vision, we talked about that before, that you're setting the expectations, we talked about that before, that you're helping to guide them for their success, then at that point it becomes a higher performance team, because you have people that are supplementing each other's strengths and weaknesses. What you don't want to do is you don't want to have a bunch of, though I think this would be a damn pretty powerful team, but a bunch of people like you. All there's only I'm not saying there's not enough room for more than one of you, but what I'm saying is that if it's all you, if it's Curtis and Matt and I, and that's the only three members of the team,
We're in trouble.
boy, I don't know. I know I'm not doing it. I mean, I'm just saying, right? Like,
Timeout. No.
I mean, like we're all gonna be like, hey, let's cast the vision, and then we're gonna be looking around, and we're gonna be like having pizza one day. We're like, well, did anybody actually ever do that thing we were gonna do? I thought you were doing it, dude. Anyways, so that's so it's about understanding to get the right people in the right places, right, and then set expectations for your relationships. And remember, a complaint reflects an unfilled expectation. I want you guys to write that down. A complaint reflects an unfilled you're leading. And when you stand for the greatness of those that you serve, and that you lead to the people's strengths, not their weaknesses, and you know the strengths to hire for your fault, then you could be able to perform at a higher level. Ruckus in my family, she's doing really good in school this year, and she's not necessarily her superpower is her charisma, is her beautiful personality. And I could tell you, she's going to get so much further in life with that beautiful personality and that charisma and that likability than if she was like, going to Harvard and, all academic, which would be great too. But it's understanding that here's the strengths. So let me pour into those strengths of my daughter or my employee. I don't like even using the word employee. I'll say my partner. Okay. I only use that word employee just so you guys understood a perspective, but I don't like that word at all. I think that's worse than a curse word, by the way. My partner. All right. And my job as that is a leader is serving them. But Curtis, what is the number one mistake that you've seen leaders make?
Ooh. Wow. You
It's a
know,
complex question because it depends
yeah,
on what level they're at, right? I'm
yeah.
thinking of a name right now that I will never say out loud. But I want you to read my mind right now,
I'm
and Matt, I
trying.
want you to read my mind right now of a gentleman, and I want you to consider what's the number one mistake that you believe that gentleman has made. I bet you I just asked that question in a way that was understood.
With me, or what you say, Matt? Is Matt on here still?
No, Matt's not in his head. Matt knows what I'm saying. You may or may not. I think you
I
do.
don't. I
Matt, you
maybe.
want to answer the question?
Where's Matt?
Uh,
There he is.
I hesitate to answer the question. And yet, so I would say that one of the biggest challenges that it's like leading through fear, like
Mm,
fear-based leadership, and just like driving for results without relationship would be probably one of the biggest things that I've seen leaders fail at.
yeah. I would answer the question, and the question with the person I'm thinking of is getting to a place of success and then not recognizing that you have to then adapt to a new.
Matt now.
Uh,
Okay. And I thought you might be going
All
there, but
right.
I wasn't sure. Yeah, that's yeah. So there's two perfect examples. He's talking about fear, and you're talking about being adaptable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I might
What
have gone towards being a poor communicator, but hey, not sure. Look, three different opinions.
Well, and I think they're all valid because I think you go. I think you both maybe mentioned John Maxwell because the leadership is like his niche, and John Maxwell goes to the five different levels of leadership, and how the pinnacle of leadership is to teach others to be leaders basically. And then we had another speaker on earlier today that was talking more about that, and but you may be on level 5 with the pinnacle relationship, leadership with one person, and number 1, which is positional leadership with another person, because you haven't yet developed the trust, you haven't yet developed the relationship, you haven't yet learned about what's in their world. And so you could be on different levels of leadership based off of the relationship, based off the size of the organization that you're leading. So I gave you an example of a very, very large, and I was very vague intentionally the way I asked the question, of an incredibly large company that I believe lost his way. Okay. And I believe that they lost their way because they had a level of success and then they didn't have the foresight to make a change to the environment. And I think that that's an example of maybe it's poor leadership, maybe it's just a mistake, maybe it was a situation that couldn't have been changed. I don't know. But the point that I'm making here that I go through in the book Teach to Sell is that you're a different leader to different people in different environments and different circumstances.
You are, and may I share what I think? I'm just going to say one word: ego.